Hi everyone, this is Shannon from Captivating Compass and Homeschool Travel Learn, and I am super excited to share with you today the planning series that I've put together. Today is the first day of it, and so this is going to be part one. I'm just going to start sharing my screen and get on with it because I really want to share with you all the different kind of moving pieces and moving parts that it takes to plan next year's curriculum when you're not really even quite done with this year's, right? Because I think that's kind of where most of us are right now, trying to finish things up and plan all at the same time. So let's get started, and let me share my screen and we will get going on the things we have to talk about. So it's the ultimate homeschool planning curriculum choices, and this is part one. And you know what, choosing your curriculum and figuring out where you're at, that starts now. So let's go ahead and get going. So what I wanted to do today is to talk with you about making the best choice when you're choosing curriculum. If you don't have the printable over here that you see pictured on the right, then I want you to stop and grab the link to go ahead and get that printable before you go on, because you're really going to need it for the success in creating this plan and finding the best pieces to fit your family for curriculum choices. So stop the video, grab the printable, you'll have it dropped into your email box really quick, and then come on back and we'll keep going. All right, so while you're getting your email, here's a little bit about me. I live in Scotland, me and my 2 kids and my husband, and we have traveled to 11 countries multiple times, and we have on our to-do list and our bucket list lots more countries, and we will get to those eventually. We have high hopes of that. We've been homeschooling for 8 years, and the 5 of those have been in Scotland. We're just finishing up our 8th year, and I also blog about homeschool and family travel over at Captivating Compass, and you'll find me on Facebook at Homeschool Travel Learn, as well as Homeschool Travel Learn Basecamp, which is the private group. So because of the various trips I've learned how to incorporate learning and travel. Today we're going to focus on the homeschool planning and the learning side of things more than the travel side, but I do have courses where those do come together, and I'll be talking more about those in future videos. So let's go ahead and get going on helping you navigate your curriculum choices. All right, so you know what? The first thing I want you to know is that curriculum frustration is real, and it happens, but it can be solved. So, you know, if you're like me, you fell in love with a curriculum, but then at some point you got that kind of little niggle that something just wasn't right. And the frustration began to set in. You know, the kids aren't inspired, you're frustrated, and the days and the to-do list drags on and on and on, and the motivation dwindles. And yeah, then there's the tears, right? It happens. It totally happens. Can you tell that I've been there more than once, unfortunately? So, but you know, the one thing I've learned is that what worked with one kid isn't necessarily going to work for the other kid. And so you may have high hopes in buying specific curriculum that you find really only works maybe with 1 or 2 of your kids, but it doesn't work for all of them. Or you find that it doesn't work for you. And so you have these past curriculums, and they've created the frustration, and there is no good fit, and that's what you really want to try to find. So we're going to slow it down, and we're going to look at a few things, and I'm going to give you the tools you need to help solve the problems and find what it is that is really going to be a good fit for your family. All right, and most of all, I want you to know that you've got this. Yes, the curriculum frustration does happen, but we can solve it together, okay? All right, so the first question we have to ask is, how do we make the best choice? So in the printable that you have, there are, looks like, what, 5 sections there. There's reflect and observe, check in and review, research and try samples. Sounds like you're going to Costco, doesn't it? And then talk with your kids, and then switch things up. So those are the sections we're going to go through. And in the workbook that you downloaded, you'll have those separate sections. And we're going to touch on each of them individually so you are able to follow along in your workbook and stop and start when you need to. Okay. So the first section is reflect and observe. So this is where you want to take a step back and you want to observe your kids and reflect a little bit on what happens, what your initial goals were, where things are at now, and see if you can do some problem solving and try to figure out where things are going well and then where things might not be going well. And this isn't to just use for the curriculum or the resources that aren't doing well, but it's also for the ones that are you're really finding success with. So you want to recognize the progress that each of your kids has made. So think about each kid individually through this process. You may even decide that there are portions of that printable that you want to print out or use for each kid and take notes for each of your children. So you want to recognize the progress that they've made academically, developmentally, as well as socially and emotionally. You know, sometimes I'll look back at things from the beginning of the year and see where the kids started and then see where they've come to, and really been impressed with how hard they have worked, even through the bad days and even through the difficult spots and the rough patches of, you know, trying to understand algebra or learning to write that 5-paragraph essay and never quite feeling like they can get the 1 paragraph down. But when you look at it, they really have made progress and they really are making great strides. Academically, maybe you'll see things developmentally or socially or emotionally happening as well when you look and you reflect back on those things. And then the other piece is you're going to explore some new avenues and some new things. So that reflecting and observing is exploring new avenues is watching your kids and seeing what they like, what they don't like, and kind of, how do you say it? What brings them joy? You know, what do they go and do to relax? What do they do to for activities? And can you use those things that are natural, that they gravitate to naturally? Can you use those as tools of learning and implement them and fold them into your learning process? So for the check-in and review section, that's like some academic soul searching. And this part is actually for you, the parent. You want to check in and search for the reason behind the challenges. And so you're first going to look at yourself, okay? Each of us, I think, we need to ask these questions to ourselves on a regular basis. So it could be that things just, the puzzle pieces aren't fitting together well. So let's just ask, these are the questions you just want to ask yourself. Am I spending the needed time to prep so that I'm an effective teacher, or am I just kind of winging it? And you might be, you know, you will have subjects that you have strengths in. And so those subjects, you may really be able to wing it. Other subjects, you really might need to prep, or the curriculum that you're using may really require you to spend a significant amount of time prepping and gathering supplies or reading literature or understanding history and dates and places and those kind of things. So ask your question, that first one there. Are you spending the needed time to prep, or are you just winging it? And then the second question there is the curriculum suited to my child's learning style? And I think that's really important because every kid learns a little bit differently. And there's so many academic and curriculum choices out there that there really is something for everybody. And once you learn your child's learning style, you can use that as you go forward, choosing the curriculum that's going to best fit them. If they're an auditory learner, you're going to want to use things that are less textbook and reading maybe, and you want to do more audio stuff or interactive type of things. So keep that in mind. And in that printable, there are some resources there to help you see the different learning styles. We're not going to go over those today. But they are there for you to read up on. So make sure you take a look at those if you're not quite sure what I'm talking about for the learning styles. So, and then the last thing is that, you know, maybe it's just a boring subject and a supplement is needed to breathe some life into it. You could have a really good curriculum for, you know, I don't know, Algebra 2, geometry. And if that is just really boring for your family, finding some ways to make it more exciting is always going to help. So keep those things in mind and ask those questions, and then move on to this next step, because this next step is the 3 key elements that you want to look at. So after all the introspection, it's time to look at the different curriculum. And so based on what you've thought about and what you've considered, you want to look for resources that cater to these 3 ideas, okay? You want to make sure that they cater to your teaching style. So if your teaching style is very hands-on, interactive, maybe it's unschooled, maybe it's classical, maybe it's a Charlotte Mason, maybe it's all textbook, maybe you're doing online stuff. There's all different styles of homeschooling. So you want to make sure that it aligns with your teaching style, but you also want to make sure that it also encompasses your child's learning style and going to benefit them in the long run. And then it also needs to line up with what your academic goals are for your family and for each child in particular. So those are the 3 key elements that you want to kind of have in your back pocket to kind of be the scale and the sheet that you balance things again. It kind of helps you avoid shiny object syndrome when you see all those fancy curriculums out there. So keep those in mind. We're going to keep on going here. And then the next step is take a big breath, and then you're going to go out and we're going to find the ones that are going to be a good fit based on those 3 things. Sometimes it takes a while. And you know what? That's going to be okay. Just keep with the process, and then we move into the next phase of things, and that is the research and actually trying samples. You know, we typically at our house, we try to end the school year sometime in April, maybe the beginning of May each year, so that we can finish up the last bits of things that maybe we're straggling through. Some things are beginning to be finished up. And then we kind of go into a phase of this evaluation process that I'm talking about right now, and looking for what are the next things we're going to need for next year. We try samples, and I go and I find the things that have kind of met those 3 key elements that we need to keep in mind. I grab some samples and we try those out, and then we talk about them. We discuss what we liked about them, what we didn't like. For any particular curriculum, we'll look at maybe only 2 or 3. That's the first thing. After you've looked at a bunch of them, choose just 1 or 2, or maybe tops 3 for your kids to actually look at, so you're not overwhelming them, okay? And then you talk about them after you've tried them, and then you just make your decisions together and go forward with the next steps. So you want to do that for each subject that you realize that you need to make a change in, or you're moving into a new phase and a new subject is necessary. Like for science, you'll go through the chemistry phase and the physics phase and the general science phase and those different things like that when you move on beyond the unit study phase. Okay, so when you're talking with your kids, you want to ask them questions about the curriculum, like what did they like about the different subjects that you've encountered, and which subjects did they feel confident in and really enjoy, and what subjects that do they find difficult and uninspiring. And so these are questions that you're asking in that beginning interview phase, kind of while you're searching for curriculum and you're making the decisions on the one you have and whether to move away or move forward or keep it and use it at its next level. These are the questions you want to ask first with your kids. And so listen to their insights and then start looking for the answers in the different types of curriculums that you are finding that you're becoming interested in. After you've talked with your kids, you still may not have all the answers. You still may be scratching your head over what some of the difficulties are and how to actually solve the problem of those difficulties. So that's where it's a really important piece of the puzzle is to just ask other homeschool families, people you know that maybe have kids that are the same age. Maybe you have friends that have kids that have the same challenges, weaknesses or strengths, and you'll be able to talk with them and just see what they're using and how they found it successful. You can read curriculum reviews. You can go on Facebook sites and see what people are saying about specific curriculums, and go to their websites and read through their reviews and check out their samples and that kind of thing. And then if you're realizing that maybe there's some academic testing and some academic advising that might be necessary. If you're really coming up with some challenging questions that you can't answer, and especially if you have a specific career path that a kid wants, or specific interests, or you have some really, what do you say? Some really challenging circumstances. Maybe you're thinking your kids might be dyslexic, or they might have a processing disorder, or some executive functioning disorders or disabilities or weaknesses, those kind of things. So that's where the academic advising and testing comes in. So find those resources, talk to other families, look online, and we will, there's a whole nother video thing there, I think, or an interview with a few people that we could do. So we'll talk about those in another video. But keep these things in mind of looking for resources and ways to help solve the problems with those curriculum as you're choosing and trying to solve the frustration with your kids and find some joy in the homeschooling. The other thing you can do is you can switch things up, because sometimes there just needs to be you just need to breathe life back into the subjects that might seem kind of dry, at least to your family. So maybe biology just needs a good, a focused nature study for 1 week, and then you jump back into it, or something like that. But you can use the samples. Sometimes using samples as a way to break things up before the end of the year really helps as well, to help them see the same subject in a different way and in a different light. And ultimately, when you do that, when you switch things up and you bring a sample in to try, or you take a little bit of a break and look at just a different aspect or way of doing a subject, you'll find one of two things. You're going to find that you either really like what you started with originally and you just need to just step back from it for a few days, or that everyone is really ready to move on and try something new. I've seen it balanced that way, to be, oh wow, we really do like what we're using. We're going to stick with it. And we just recognize that that there's going to be some hard spots in it, and we just need to help each other through that. Or, wow, why didn't I grab this one sooner? This curriculum is so great. And making the choice then to move forward, and everybody's excited with it. And then at that point, it's time to start the adventure. So let's do that. Let's let the adventure begin. So what I want you to do as we're wrapping this up is I want you to get the resources to get started, because this takes a few days. And I want you to make sure with that printable you use it and go through just kind of analyzing. If you don't get to the sample stage and you don't get further than that yet, that's okay. There is time to do that. That to me is kind of what summers are for. And so what I want you to do next is do the printable, do the worksheets with your kids, with your families, get as far as you can with that. And then join me in the next video, where we're going to take inventory and make a plan for what sort resources we think we need. So we're going to look at how do we pull all the different subjects together, and what do we need to look at for the kids. And if you want to join me over on Facebook in the private Facebook group for Basecamp, or you can also join me over on the website and the different places there, where we'll be talking about these things and helping you create a plan and make the best choice for your curriculum. So thank you for joining me. If you have questions, you can always join me on the Facebook and ask your questions in there. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video and over at Captivating Compass. Oh, and the next part is part 2. It is going to be the taking inventory. So make sure you grab that, and we'll see you in part 2.